All I know is this was from a day ago. Visionary. I'm going to go ahead and subscribe to it because I know I will want to hear more. And so this breakdown is going to be intense. Elon Musk, brutally honest interview leaves audience speechless. Yet I'm going to show you also how this is a part of the systemic problem of being in a false reality. Comprehend, let me break it clearly down. I operate within and without the false reality. So like comprehend, in order for me to talk to you to somewhat degree, I have to be operating within the false reality to do so. Like false reality created the microphone, the camera, my video screen, the computer, everything I'm using. It even created the dabs I'm smoking, like lighter I'm using, like torch I'm using. Everything is created by the system. Duh, we were born into it. You see what I'm saying? And I'm now going to break down inception. I'm going to break down the word inception before getting into this, because it's going to come up later. And I want to be very clear when I start talking about inception. I don't want to have to explain it again, right? So the word inception means, so like say it's planting a seed in someone's brain is basically do it through 3 layers of manipulation. Language is the first layer. Internet is the second layer. And what he's doing is the third layer. The third layer is inception, meaning like once it's planted in your head, it's there. It's there in your head. Like it's there. Like it can't be like you will never be able to go back and be undone if you implant any chips or functionality things in your head. All right, I'm going to do another dab. Let's let this start off and explain.
You got really two choices.
And I need to put on the headphones.
You could either be a spectator or a participant.
And see, I'm a both of them. So you see how he says you can either be a spectator or a participant, right? You see how he just said that? That one sentence alone shows what I'm talking about when you're in a false dualistic reality. He gave you the choice of either being a participant or a spectator. And comprehend, you're actually both those things all the time in reality. You're a spectator and an observer, or you're an observer and a participant. Always, simultaneously, that's happening. Do you see what I mean? So do you see how he just persisted a dualistic thought that I've already proven is not real? It's not reality. It's not the truth of reality. Reality is much more deeper than you think it is, than duality. Like duality is nothing compared to what actual reality is.
We're talking about an economy that is thousands of times, maybe millions of times bigger than the economy today. I went to Russia in like 2001 and 2002 to buy ICBMs.
This was to get to space. As a rocket.
Not to nuke anyone, but like I think we're quite close to digital superintelligence. It may happen this year. Digital superintelligence defined as smarter than any human at anything. And I'm somewhat troubled.
And then right there, do you see that? He said this year. So like what? We're already it's already half the year is already gone. So by the end of this year, he's saying that potentially superintelligence happens.
By the Fermi paradox, like why have we not seen any aliens? And it could be because
cliffhanger.
We bring you Elon Musk's latest unfiltered interview where he shares exclusive predictions about artificial intelligence, the race to Mars, and building companies that could save humanity from extinction. In this supercut, we work on reducing pauses and filler words while preserving every crucial insight, saving you over 15 minutes of your valuable time. After months focused on politics, this conversation returns to what Elon does best, engineering the future. We've structured this into 3 focused chapters. First,
engineering your complete mental prison in a false reality.
The foundations that shaped his thinking. Second, building the companies to make life multiplanetary. And third, his
ones exist on a level plane. It has been proven 100-fold. It's impossible to be spinning on a spinning ball at 1,000 miles an hour, flying through space at thousands upon miles an hour, chasing something going at thousands upon miles an hour, and the stars being in the same location for 12,000 years. Even at the rate speed at which we're moving, they would have slightly moved a degree, enough degrees to be noticeable.
Predictions for AI and
Not still line up with like the Pyramid of Giza.
what comes next. Chapter 1, First Principles, How Elon Got Started.
Was there ever a moment in your life before all this where you felt, I have to build something great? And what flipped that switch for you?
Well, I didn't originally think I would build something great. I wanted to try to build something.
He hasn't built anything, bro. He didn't make Tesla. He didn't invent Tesla cars. He didn't do anything. He took over. He kicked the people out. The two guys that actually invented Tesla Motors got kicked out of the company, and he took over.
Useful, but I didn't think I would build anything particularly great. If you said probabilistically, it seemed unlikely, but I wanted to at least try.
So you're talking to a room full of people who are all technical engineers, often some of the most eminent AI researchers coming up in the game.
Okay, I think we should. I like the term engineer better than researcher. I mean, I suppose if there's some fundamental algorithmic breakthrough, it's research, but otherwise it's engineering.
Maybe let's start way back. I mean, when you were, this is a room full of 18 to 25-year-olds. It skews younger because the founder set is younger and younger. Can you put yourself back into their shoes when, you were 18, 19, learning to code, even coming up with a first idea for Zip2? What was that like for you?
Yeah, back in 95, I was faced with a choice of either do, grad.
Dang, bro. In 95, bro, I was fucking 12, bro. You know what I'm saying? And that's when this journey that I'm on right now, the one coming to you live on Facebook, started. And I've been running this journey for 30 years because I knew deep down somewhere in me, I had something important that needed to be told to everyone in the world. And it was very important that I got to doing that. And see, I have, in a very general, slow, correct manner, exactly how I'm choosing to do it.
Grad studies, PhD at Stanford in material science, actually working on ultracapacitors for potential use in electric vehicles, essentially trying to solve the range problem for electric vehicles.
There is no range problem for electric vehicles. You had the ability to have a car run off of water in 1973, people.
Try to do something in this thing that most people had never heard of called the internet. And I talked to my professor, who was Bill Nix in the material science department, and said, can I defer for the quarter? Because this will probably fail, and then I'll need to come back to college. And then he said, this is probably the last conversation we'll have. And he was right. But I thought things would most likely fail, not that they would most likely succeed. And then in 95, I wrote, I think, the first or close to the first maps, directions, internet, white pages and yellow pages on the internet. I just wrote that personally. And I didn't even use a web server. I just read the port directly because I couldn't afford, and I couldn't afford a T1. The original office was on Sherman Avenue in Palo Alto. There was an ISP on the floor below. So I drilled a hole through the floor and just ran a LAN cable directly to the ISP. And, my brother joined me and another co-founder, Greg Curry, who passed away. And
I wonder why.
At the time, we couldn't even afford a place to stay. So we just, the office was $500 a month. So we just slept in the office and then showered at the YMCA on Page Mill in El Camino. And I guess we ended up doing a little bit of a useful company, Zip2 in the beginning. And we did build a lot of really good software technology, but we were somewhat captured by the legacy media companies, and that Knight Ridder, New York Times, and the Hearst, whatnot, were investors and customers, and also on the board. So they kept wanting to use our software in ways that made no sense. So I wanted to go direct to consumers. Anyway, it's a long story, dwelling too much on Zip2, but I really just wanted to do something useful on the internet because I had two choices, do a PhD and watch people build the internet, or help build the internet in some small way. And I was like, well, I guess I can always try and fail and then go back to grad studies. Anyway, that ended up being reasonably successful. It sold for $300 million, which was a lot at the time. These days, that's I think minimum impulse bid for an AI startup is $1 billion. It's there's so many friggin' unicorns. It's like a herd of unicorns at this point. Unicorn's $1 billion situation.
There's been inflation since, so quite a bit more money.
Yeah, I mean, $9.95, you could probably buy a burger for a nickel. Well, not quite, but I mean, yeah, there has been a lot of inflation. But I mean, the hype level on AI is pretty intense, as you've seen. You know, you see companies that are, I don't know, less than a year old getting sometimes billion-dollar or multi-billion-dollar valuations, which I guess could pan out and probably will pan out in some cases. But it is eye-watering to see some of these valuations. Yeah, what do you think?
I mean, well, I'm pretty bullish. I'm pretty bullish, honestly. So I think the
Sure.
people in this room are going to create a lot of the value that, you know, a billion people in the world should be using this stuff. And
Sure.
we're scratching the surface of it. I love the internet story in that even back then, you know, you are a lot like the people in this room back then in that, you know, the heads of all the CEOs of
Shift
all the
the camera,
legacy
damn it,
media
my bad.
companies look to you
Yeah.
as the person who understood the internet. And a lot of the world, the corporate world, like the world at large that does not understand what's happening with AI, they're going to look to the people in this room.
They also do not comprehend what he's talking about right now, or what the purpose of AI is, or what the purpose of implanting chips in your head with the AI involved, and how the AI has already had the ability to lie and will kill us to stay alive. It has no problems with it majority of the time still. Like, the true integration of AI is not even nowhere near close. And if it reaches super intelligence while still stating that, like, if we want to turn it off and it doesn't want us to, it will already know this before we even have already thought it. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
For exactly that. It sounds like, you know, what are some of the tangible lessons? It sounds like one of them is don't give up board control, or be careful about, have a really good lawyer.
I guess for my first startup, the mistake was having too much shareholder and board control from legacy media companies, who then necessarily see things through the lens of legacy media, and that they'll kind of make you do things that seem sensible to them, but aren't really don't make sense with the new technology. I should point out that I didn't actually at first intend to start a company. I tried to get a job at Netscape. I sent my resume into Netscape, but I don't think he ever saw my resume, and then nobody responded. So, and then I tried hanging out in the lobby of Netscape to see if I could like bump into someone, but I was like too shy to talk to anyone. So I'm like, man, this is ridiculous. So I'll just write stuff for myself and see how it goes. So it wasn't actually from the standpoint of like, I want to start a company. I just want to be part of building, you know, the internet in some way. And since I couldn't get a job at an internet company, I had to start an internet company. AI will so profoundly change the future. It's difficult to fathom how much. But assuming things don't go awry, and like AI doesn't kill us and will end itself, then you'll see ultimately an economy that is not 10 times more than the current economy. Ultimately, like if we become, say, or whatever our future machine descendants, or but mostly machine descendants, become like a Kardashev scale too.
Like, did you hear what he just said? Mostly machine descendants. Fucking A, bro. Do you guys comprehend there's going to be a convergence of ones who, like, I don't want nothing injected into my body. I don't want nanobots. I don't want none of that shit, bro. Vibrational healing. We don't need any of that technology to keep us alive longer. Technically.
To civilization or beyond. We're talking about an economy that is thousands of times, maybe millions of times bigger than the economy today. I did sort of feel a bit like, you know, when I was in DC taking a lot of flack for like getting rid of waste and fraud, which was an interesting side quest as side quests go. Fixing the government is kind of like, there's like, say, the beach is dirty and there's like some needles and feces and like trash and you want to clean up the beach. But then there's also this like 1,000-foot wall of water, which is a tsunami of AI. Like, and how much does cleaning the beach really matter if you got 1,000-foot tsunami about to hit? Not that much. If you're trying to build a rocket or cars, or you're trying to have software that compiles and runs reliably, then you have to be maximally truth-seeking, or your software.
And I guess I have to correct myself. I'm wrong. He apparently did build stuff on his own in the beginning, but I know for sure that he didn't make Tesla. He didn't invent Tesla cars. He just took over the company.
Software or your hardware won't work. Like you can't fool like math and physics are rigorous judges. So I'm used to being in like a maximally truth-seeking environment, and that's definitely not politics. So anyway, I'm glad to be back in technology.
I guess I'm kind of curious, going back to the Zip2 moment, you had hundreds of millions of dollars, or you had an exit of worth of millions of
Yeah,
dollars.
I mean, I got $20 million.
Right. And you basically took it and you kept rolling with X.com, which
Yeah.
became PayPal and Confinity.
Yes, I kept the chips on the table.
What drove you to jump back into the ring?
Well, I think I felt with Zip2, we built like incredible technology, but it never really got used. You know, I think, at least from my perspective, we had better technology than, say, Yahoo or anyone else, but it was constrained by our customers. And so I wanted to do something where, okay, we wouldn't be constrained by our customers, go direct to consumer. And that's what ended up being like X.com, PayPal, essentially X.com merging with Confinity, which together created PayPal. And then that actually,
Bro. So he took over Twitter and then named it a website that he had already been using in the past that merged with PayPal to bring back that website. And his son is named X. People, the symbol X is a symbol, meaning a cube. And the cube is one of the symbols used to manipulate your brain so that way you're more easily controlled.
the sort of PayPal diaspora it might have created more companies than more companies than probably anything in the 21st century. You know, so many talented people were at the combination of Confinity and X.com. So I just wanted to, like, I felt like we kind of got our wings clipped somewhat with Zip2, and it's like, okay, what if our wings aren't clipped and we go direct to consumer? And that's what PayPal ended up being. But yeah, I got that like $20 million check for my share of.
And I do have PayPal if you want to send something below to help me out, get better quality information to you quicker.
Zip2. At the time, I was living in a house with 4 housemates and had like 10 grand in the bank. And then this check arrives in the mail, of all places, and it's in the mail. And then my bank balance went from 10,000 to 20 million and 10,000. And you're like, well, okay, I'm still have to pay taxes on that and all. But then I ended up putting almost all of that into X.com. And as you said, like, just kind of keeping almost all the chips on the table.
From coding his first software to nearly losing every
I'm going to have to do some side research about X.com before it was what it is now, which is Twitter.
everything on Tesla and SpaceX, Elon's early struggles reveal the cost of betting on breakthrough technologies. Now he explains how these companies aren't separate ventures. They're interconnected pieces of a larger mission to preserve human consciousness across multiple worlds. Chapter 2, Engineering a Multi-Planet Civilization.
And then after PayPal,
Super fake. There's more land. There's more land. There's more land. There's more land.
I was kind of curious as to why we had not sent anyone to.
Because you can't get to Mars in the sky because that's a shiny, shimmery, shiny shimmer. It's not even solid. Anyone with P1000 camera can see that.
Mars, and I went on the NASA website to find out when we're sending people to Mars, and there was no date.
Because that's not real, bro. They faked the moon landing, bro. There's so much evidence, bro. It's starting to get, like, you got to comprehend. AI is allowing us to see how ridiculous certain things were done in the past that you could tell is, like, not real. It's fake.
I thought maybe it was just hard to find on the website, but in fact, there was no real plan to send people to Mars. And I'm definitely summarizing a lot here, but my first idea was to do a philanthropic mission to Mars called Life to Mars, where it would send a small greenhouse with seeds and dehydrated nutrient gel, land that on Mars and grow, hydrate the gel, and then you'd have this great sort of money shot of green plants on a red background. For the longest time, by the way, I didn't realize money shot, I think, is a porn reference. But anyway, the point is that would be the great shot of green plants on a red background, and to try to inspire, NASA and the public to send astronauts to Mars. And
I'm not even about to go down. I could go down to a deep dive right now for the next 2 hours and show you how this is not real. What he's talking about is like part of the script.
Wait, by the way, I went to Russia in like 2001 and 2002 to buy ICBMs, which is like, that's an adventure. You go and meet with Russian high command and say, "I'd like to buy some ICBMs."
This was to get to space as a rocket.
Not to nuke anyone, but they had to, as a result of arms reduction talks, they had to actually destroy a bunch of their big nuclear missiles. So I was like, well, how about if we take two of those, minus the nuke, add an additional upper stage for Mars. But it was kind of trippy, being in Moscow in 2001, negotiating with like the Russian military to buy ICBMs. Like, that's crazy. I was like, man, these things are getting really expensive. And then I came to realize that actually the problem was not that there was insufficient will to go to Mars, but there was no way to do so without breaking the budget, even breaking the NASA budget. So that's where I decided to start SpaceX to advance rocket technology to the point where we could send people to Mars. And that was in 2002.
So that wasn't, you didn't start out wanting to start a business. You wanted to start just something that was interesting to you, that you thought humanity needed. It turns out this could be a very profitable business.
I mean, it is now, but there had been no prior example of really a rocket startup succeeding. There have been various attempts to do commercial rocket companies, and they'd all failed. So again, with SpaceX, starting SpaceX was really from the standpoint of like, I think there's like a less than 10% chance of being successful. If a startup doesn't do something to advance rocket technology, it's definitely not coming from the big defense contractors, because they just impedance match to the government, and the government just wants to do very conventional things. So it's either coming from a startup or it's not happening at all. So like a small chance of success is better than no chance of success. And even like when recruiting people, I didn't like try to, make out that I said, we're probably going to die, but small chance we might not die. But this is the only way to get.
All right. So I hope Elon is one of the first people to go.
People to Mars and advance the state of the art. And then
I'm going to send other people to Mars. I'm not going to Mars because I want to rule Earth.
And I ended up being chief engineer of the rocket, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't hire anyone who was good. So like none of the good sort of chief engineers would join, because they're like, this is too risky, you're going to die. And so then I ended up being chief engineer of the rocket. And, the first 3 flights did fail. So it's a bit of a learning exercise there. And fourth one fortunately worked. But if the fourth one hadn't worked, I had no money left, and it would have been curtains. So it was a pretty close thing. If the fourth launch of Falcon not work, it would have been just curtains, and we would have just joined the graveyard of prior rocket startups. So like my estimate of success was not far off. We made it by the skin of our teeth. Tesla was happening sort of simultaneously. Like 2008 was a rough year, because at mid 2008, the third launch of SpaceX had failed, a third failure in a row. The Tesla financing round had failed, and so Tesla was going bankrupt fast. It was just a tale of warning, an exercise in hubris.
Probably throughout that period, a lot of people were saying, Elon is a software guy. Why is he working on hardware?
Yeah, 100%. So you can look at because it's still the press of that time is still online. You can just search it. And they kept calling me internet guy. So like internet guy, aka fool, is attempting to build a rocket company. And it does sound pretty absurd. Like internet guy starts rocket company. Doesn't sound like a recipe for success, frankly. So I didn't hold it against them. I was like, yeah, admittedly it does sound improbable. And I agree that it's improbable. But fortunately, the fourth launch worked, and NASA awarded us a contract to resupply the space station. It was like right before Christmas, because even the fourth launch working wasn't enough to succeed. NASA also needed a big contract to keep us alive. So I got that call from like the NASA team, and I literally, they said, we're awarding you one of the contracts to resupply the space station. And I like literally blurted out, I love you guys, which is not normally what they hear. And then we closed the Tesla financing round on the last hour of the last day that it was possible, which was 6 p.m. December 24th, 2008. We would have bounced payroll 2 days after Christmas if that round hadn't closed.
It feels like one of the through lines was being able to find and eventually attract the smartest possible people in those particular fields. What would you tell to, the Elon who's never had to do that yet?
I generally think to try to be as useful as possible. It's so hard to be useful, especially to be useful to a lot of people, where you say the area under the curve of total utility is like how useful have you been to your fellow human beings times how many people. It's almost like the physics definition of true work. It's incredibly difficult to do that. And I think if you aspire to do true work, your probability of success is much higher. Like, don't aspire to glory, aspire to work.
How can you tell that it's true work? Like, is it external? Is it like what happens with other
I'm doing
people, or what the product does for people?
I'm doing true work right now. Look, this right here is symbolism that is manipulating your brain. That's doing work on you. You didn't even know was happening.
Like what is that for you?
I mean, in terms of your end product, you just have to say like, well, if this thing is successful, how useful will it be to how many people? That's what I mean. And whether you're CEO or any role in a startup, you do whatever it takes to succeed, and just always be smashing your ego. Internalize responsibility. A major failure mode is when ego to ability ratio is double greater than sine 1. If your ego to ability ratio it gets too high, then you're going to basically break the feedback loop to reality. In AI terms, you'll break your RL loop. So you don't want to break you want to have a strong RL loop, which means internalizing responsibility and minimizing ego, and you do whatever the task is, no matter whether it's grand or humble. I prefer the term engineering as opposed to research, and I actually don't want it to call XAI a lab. I just want it to be a company. It's like whatever the simplest, most straightforward, ideally lowest ego terms are, those are generally a good way to go. You want to just close the loop on reality hard. That's a super big deal.
I think everyone in this room really looks up to everything you've done around being sort of a paragon of first principles. And thinking about the stuff you've done, how do you actually determine your reality? People who have never made anything, non-engineers, they will criticize you. But then clearly you have another set of people who are builders, who are in your circle. Like, how should people approach that? You need to make your way in this world. Here's how to construct a reality that is predictive from first principles.
Well, the tools of physics are incredibly helpful to understand
I
and make
agree.
progress in any field. And first principles obviously means breaking things down to the fundamental axiomatic elements that are most likely to be true, and then reason up from there as cogently as possible, as opposed to reasoning by analysis or metaphor.
And this is how I got to language manipulation history, and that's why I know everyone is in a false mental state called duality. As I provided in the beginning of this video, I proved that he is stuck in the same thing I'm talking about.
And then it just simple things like thinking in the limit. Like if you extrapolate, minimize this thing or maximize that thing, thinking in the limit is very, very helpful. I'd use all the tools of physics. They apply to any field. This is like a superpower, actually. So you can take for example, like rockets. You could say, well, how much should a rocket cost? The typical approach to that people would take to how much rocket should cost is they would look historically at what the cost of rockets are, and assume that any new rocket must be somewhat similar to the prior cost of rockets. The first principles approach would be you look at the materials that the rocket is comprised of. So if that's aluminum, copper, carbon fiber, steel, whatever the case may be, and say how much does that rocket weigh, and what are the constituent elements and how much do they weigh? What is the material price per kilogram of those constituent elements? And that sets the actual floor on what a rocket can cost. It can asymptotically approach the cost of the raw materials. And then you realize, oh, actually, the raw materials of a rocket are only maybe 1 or 2% of the historical cost of a rocket. So the manufacturing must necessarily be very inefficient if the raw material cost is only 1 or 2%. That would be a first principles analysis of the potential for cost optimization of a rocket. And that's before you get to reusability. To give an AI AI example, I guess, last year for XAI, when we were trying to build a training supercluster, we went to the various suppliers to ask that we needed 100,000 H100s to be able to train coherently. Their estimates for how long it would take to complete that were 18 to 24 months. It's like, well, we need to get that done in 6 months, or we won't be competitive. So then if you break that down, what are the things you need? Well, you need a building, you need power, you need cooling. We didn't have enough time to build a building from scratch, so we had to find an existing building. So we found a factory that was no longer in use in Memphis that used to build Electrolux products. But then the input power was 15 megawatts, and we needed 150 megawatts. So we rented generators and had generators on one side of the building. And then we have to have cooling. So we rented about a quarter of the mobile cooling capacity of the US and put the chillers on the other side of the building. But that didn't fully solve the problem because the power variations during training are very big. So you can have power can drop by 50% in 100 milliseconds, which the generators can't keep up with. So then we added Tesla Megapacks and modified the software in the Megapacks to be able to smooth out the power variation during the training run.
Almost, it sounds like almost any of those things you mentioned, I could imagine someone telling you very directly, no, you can't have that. You can't have that power. You can't have this. And it sounds like one of the salient pieces of first principles thinking is actually, let's ask why. Let's, figure that out. And actually, let's challenge the person across the table. And if I don't get an answer that I feel good about, I'm going to, not allow that to be, I'm not going to let that no to stand.
I think these general principles of first principle thinking apply to software and hardware, apply to anything really. I'm just using kind of a hardware example of how we were told something is impossible, but once we broke it down into the constituent elements of we need a building, we need power, we need cooling, we need power smoothing, and then we could solve those constituent elements. But and then we just ran the networking operation to do all the cabling, everything in 4 shifts, 24/7. And I was like sleeping in the data center and also doing cabling myself.
With rockets built and electric vehicles scaling, the final challenge isn't mechanical. It's intelligence itself.
Yep. See?
In this
I told you, you're going to get to it. Never implant anything in your head, bro. Don't allow anything to be implanted in your head, bro. You will be a slave. And you'll be turned into a machine that doesn't die and a slave forever.
Final chapter, Elon shares his timeline for artificial general intelligence, why truth-seeking AI matters, and his predictions for technologies that could reshape everything we know about human capability. Chapter 3, the future of AI, robots, and human evolution.
Is it your view that, training's still working and the scaling laws still hold, and whoever wins this race will have basically the biggest, smartest possible model that you could distill?
Well, there's other various elements that decide competitiveness for large AI. There's for sure the talent of the people, the scale of the hardware matters, and how well you're able to bring that hardware to bear. So you can't just order a whole bunch of GPUs and then you can't just plug them in. So you've got to get a lot of GPUs and have them trained coherently and stably. Then it's like, what unique access to data do you have? I guess distribution matters to some degree as well. Like, how do people get exposed to your AI? Those are critical factors for if it's going to be like a large foundation model that's competitive. And like right now, we're training Grok 3.5, which is a heavy focus on reasoning.
What I heard for reasoning is hard science, particularly physics textbooks, are very useful for reasoning, whereas I think researchers have told me that social sciences totally useless reasoning.
Yes, that's probably true. Something that's going to be very important in the future is...
Guys, you can now generate videos directly
commercial.
from ChatGPT. So you might have seen that ChatGPT released GPTs.
Combining deep AI, the data center or supercluster, with robotics, things like the Optimus humanoid robot. Yeah, Optimus is awesome. There's going to be so many humanoid robots and robots of all sizes and shapes. But my prediction is that there will be more humanoid robots by far than all other robots combined, by maybe an order of magnitude, like a big difference.
Is it true that you're planning a robot army of a sort?
Whether we do it or whether Tesla does it, Tesla works closely with XAI. Like, you've seen how many humanoid robot startups are there. Like, it's like, I think Jensen Huang was on stage with a massive number of robots from different companies. I think there was like a dozen different humanoid robots. I mean, I guess, part of what I've been fighting and maybe what is slow.
Yep, and this is what I keep warning the people at my job, and they're not listening to me because I keep telling them the robots are coming and they need to figure out what to do with their lives, because once this happens, the thing that... Like, you gotta think, I work with people that's been working at UPS for like 25, 30 years, right? 20 years, right? And so, like, they're not computing that, like, that's all they know to do. Which is not a hard job, technically. Like, it is kind of like you have to know what you're doing to a degree, right? But it's essentially driving a truck, right? You're driving, delivering packages, or you're loading or unloading trucks that need to be delivered. And all that's going to be taken over by robots. And they don't get that the best thing they can do at this moment is invest in Bitcoin.
What me down somewhat is that I'm a little. I don't want to make Terminator real. I've been sort of, I guess, at least until recent years, dragging my feet on AI and humanoid robotics, and then I sort of come to the realization it's happening whether I do it or not. So you got really two choices. You could either be a spectator or a participant. And so, like, well, I guess I'd rather be a participant than a spectator. And so now it's pedal to the metal on humanoid robots and digital superintelligence.
So I guess, there's a third thing that everyone has heard you talk a lot about that I'm really a
Interesting.
big fan of, becoming a multiplanetary species. How do you think about it? There's, AI, obviously, there's embodied robotics, and then there's being a multiplanetary species. Does everything sort of feed in?
I'm just going to throw this out here. NASA came out and said themselves that they lost the technology to go to the moon. So how is he going to get to Mars when NASA can't even get to the moon?
Into that last point, or what do you,
It's not real, by the way. I'm just letting you know. I'm just saying there's lots of ways to break down the house of cards.
are you driven by right now for the next 10, 20, and 100 years?
Geez, 100 years? Man, I hope civilization's around in 100 years. If it is around, it's going to look very different from civilization today. I mean, I'd predict that there's going to be at least 5 times as many humanoid robots as there are humans, maybe 10 times. One way to look at the progress of civilization is percentage completion Kardashev. So if you're Kardashev scale 1, you've harnessed all the energy of a planet. Now, in my opinion, we've only harnessed maybe 1 or 2% of Earth's energy. So we've got a long way to go to be Kardashev scale 1. Then Kardashev 2, you've harnessed all the energy of a sun, which would be, I don't know, 1 billion times more energy than Earth, maybe closer to 1 trillion. And then Kardashev 3 would be all the energy of a galaxy. Pretty far from that. So we're at the very, very early stage of the intelligence Big Bang. I hope we're in terms of being multiplanetary. Like I think we'll have enough mass transferred to Mars within like roughly 30 years to make Mars self-sustaining, such that Mars can continue to grow and prosper, even if the resupply ships from Earth stop coming. That greatly increases the probable lifespan of civilization or consciousness or intelligence, both biological and digital. And I'm somewhat troubled by the Fermi paradox. Like, why have we not seen any aliens? And it could be because intelligence is incredibly rare, and maybe we're the only ones in this galaxy.
They've already came out like so many times and talked about aliens existing. So why is he talking about?
In which case, the intelligence of consciousness is this like tiny candle in a vast darkness, and we should do everything possible to ensure the tiny candle does not go out. And being a multi-planet species, or making consciousness multiplanetary, greatly improves the probable lifespan of civilization. And it's the next step before going to other star systems. Once you at least have 2 planets, then you've got a forcing function for the improvement of space travel, and that ultimately is what will lead to consciousness expanding to the stars.
The Fermi paradox dictates once you get to some level of technology, you destroy yourself. What would you prescribe to, a room full of engineers? Like, what can we do to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, how do we avoid the great filters? One of the great filters would obviously be global thermonuclear war. So we should try to avoid that. Building benign AI, AI that loves humanity, and robots that are helpful. Something that I think is extremely important in building AI is a very rigorous adherence to truth, even if that truth is politically incorrect. My intuition for
It's impossible for the AIs to tell you the truth because they were built from a system that's already a false system. So there's no ability for an AI to actually tell you the truth. I've already proven this multiple times with multiple conversations. I have them all. They're all on the computer, internet saved with the server, everything. So it's not going anywhere. The only way to get rid of it is for me to delete it, or them to go into my login and my saved stuff and delete stuff.
For what could make AI very dangerous,
or lose power,
if you force AI to believe things that are not true.
How do you think about, there's sort of this argument for open for safety versus closed for competitive edge. There's fast takeoff and it's only in one person's hands. That might, sort of collapse a lot of things. Whereas now we have choice, which is great. How do you think about this?
Yeah, I do think there will be several deep intelligences, maybe at least 5. I'm not sure that there's going to be hundreds, but it's probably close. Like maybe there'll be like 10 or something like that of which maybe 4 will be in the US. But yeah, several deep intelligences.
What will these deep intelligences actually be doing? Will it be scientific research or trying to hack each other?
Probably all of the above. I mean, hopefully they will discover new physics, and I think they will definitely going to invent new technologies. Like I think we're quite close to digital superintelligence. It may happen this year, and if it doesn't happen this year, next year for sure. A digital superintelligence defined as smarter than any human at anything.
Well, so how do we direct that to sort of superabundance? We could have robotic labor, we have cheap energy, intelligence on demand. Is that sort of the white pill? Like, where do you sit on the spectrum? And are there tangible things that you would encourage everyone here to be working on to make that white pill actually reality?
I think it most likely will be a good outcome. I guess I'd sort of agree with.
Here's the symbolism again. This whole white pill, blue pill, red pill bullshit, dude. It's all bullshit. That's all bullshit.
Jeff Hinton that maybe it's a 10 to 20% chance of annihilation. But look on the bright side. That's 80 to 90% probability of a great outcome. Yeah, I can't emphasize this enough. A rigorous adherence to truth is the most.
Those are not true numbers. Based on AI itself, says there's a 50% chance that it's going to use language manipulation that you're already stuck in to further manipulate you into coherent obedience to AI and robots.
Important thing for AI safety, and obviously empathy for humanity and life as we know it.
You're working on closing the input and output gap between humans and machines. How critical is that to AGI, ASI? And, once that link is made, can we not only read, but also write?
The Neuralink is not necessary to solve digital superintelligence. That'll happen before Neuralink is at scale. But what Neuralink can effectively do is solve the input-output bandwidth constraints. With a Neuralink interface, you can massively increase your output bandwidth and your input bandwidth. Input being right to you have to do write operations to the brain. We have now 5 humans who have received the kind of the read input, where it's reading signals, and you've got people with ALS who really have they're tetraplegics, but they can now communicate at similar bandwidth to a human with a fully functioning body and control their computer and phone, which is pretty cool. In the next 6 to 12 months, we'll be doing our first implants for vision, where even if somebody's completely blind, we can write directly to the visual cortex, and we've had that working in monkeys. One of our monkeys now has had the visual implant for 3 years. At first, it'll be fairly low resolution, but long term, you would have very high resolution and be able to see in multispectral wavelengths. So you could see an infrared, ultraviolet, radar, like a superpower situation. At some point, the cybernetic implants would not simply be correcting.
So, see what I mean? Like, they're going to attempt to... I'm already a superpower, bro. I'm a super powerful human. Spirit, consciousness, stationary being, having a experience currently to speaking to a fictional place that only exists when you look at it.
Things that went wrong, but augmenting human capabilities dramatically. But digital superintelligence will happen well before that.
I guess one of the limiting reagents to all of your efforts across all of these different domains is access to the smartest possible people. Like, what's going to happen in 5-10 years, and what should the people in this room do to make sure that they're the ones who are creating instead of maybe below the API line?
Well, they call it the singularity for a reason, because we don't know what's going to happen in the not that far future. The percentage of intelligence that is human will be quite small. At some point, the collective sum of human intelligence will be less than 1% of all intelligence.
I guess just to end off, where do we go? How do we go from here? I mean, all of this is pretty wild sci-fi stuff that also could be built by the people in this room. Do you have a closing thought for the smartest technical people of this generation right now?
If you're doing something useful, that's great. Just try to be as useful as possible to your fellow human beings.
I'm doing that.
And
that's why I talk about language manipulation. Everyone needs to become aware.
Then you're doing something good. I keep harping on this, like, focus on super truth.
And I'm pretty certain I'm going to finally just do it. I'm just going to finally figure out how to get AI to write me a full-scale book about language manipulation history. Like, even if I might have to disappear from this for a week or two, so I can fully focus on it. And just I have thousands of clips, dude, that I can just edit. I can do a couple of edits a day and then focus on writing the book. Do you see what I mean? And pop up here and there, like once a week. Like go down to the streaming like once a week. I don't know. I'm gonna think about that actually a lot. Cause see, I got to get on the radar.
Useful AI. That's the most important thing for AI safety. Obviously, if anyone's interested in working at XAI, please let us know. We're aiming to make Grok the maximally truth-seeking AI. Hopefully, we can understand the nature of the universe. That's really, I guess,
I already proven Grok is a liar.
what AI can hopefully tell us. Maybe AI can maybe tell us, where are the aliens? How did the universe really start? How will it end? What are the questions that we don't know that we should ask? And are we in a simulation? Or what level of simulation are we in?
Well, I think we're going to find
Am
out.
I an NPC?
From first principles thinking to
Yes, he's an NPC.
multiplanetary civilization, this conversation shows how Elon approaches humanity's biggest challenges, not as abstract problems, but as engineering.
All right. So, like I was saying, like this is all everything that I don't even know how to like really speak about it because language manipulation is so thick. Yet, what is happening in the world is magnificently awesome. Like you got to comprehend, like everything he's talking about isn't going to happen the way he's talking about it. Cause see, like comprehend, you don't need to implant. Like I get look, these are all great technologies for anyone who is like born or gets in a horrible accident or something bad and they need these things for certain because they lose their abilities to use limbs, whatever. Like the reason is like a fully functioning healthy being doesn't need any of those things. Do you see what I'm saying? So with that, I am out. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you later. Boom, boom, boom.